Welcome to the Mining Core tutorial series. This video is going to serve as an introduction to the series slash e-course, if you will, where we're going to cover setting up your own Mining Core pool instance on your local network with the premise of using it for solo mining various cryptocurrencies versus just being able to only solo mine Bitcoin or only Digibyte. Our purpose here is to walk you through how to set up a mining pool software package. In this case, we're going to be using Mining Core for this tutorial series. But the goal is to get you a platform that makes it very easy to add more coins in the future without going through extensive setups. So in order to do that, we're going to start with talking about the various methods that you can solo mine. And then later on in the series, in the next couple videos, we're going to be jumping in and actually getting a fully operational mining pool setup, as I mentioned, using Mining Core. And then, but the first couple videos are going to serve as kind of getting the core components installed, getting a database server up and running, getting Docker installed, getting the Mining Core set up there, not necessarily running a pool, but just getting all the core set up. And then we'll start adding some coins in some later videos. And the goal here is to create what I'll say are shorter videos. And are very concentrated on one specific piece. So we'll start off and we'll have a video that'll be just setting up Mining Core. And then we'll have another video that might be how to add Bitcoin to Mining Core, or how to add Bitcoin Cash to Mining Core, or how to add Varus Coin to Mining Core. Those types of videos so that you'll be able to pick and choose just the pieces you want, and there won't be a lot of repetitive steps in the tutorials that would basically be covered in every video. So we're going to jump right in, and I kind of want to talk about, I briefly mentioned it, but what this series is about. So we're basically going to be focusing on those mini lessons surrounding running your own mining pool on your home network. And the purposes of doing this are mainly around solo mining. However, this can apply to pool mining if you want. But we're not going to go into too many details around firewall configurations, network configuration, anything like that. We're mainly just going to be talking about how to get it up and running on your home network with the expectation that you've already got some mining equipment that you just want to point at it. And as I mentioned already, at its core, the purpose of this series is to set up a Mining Core instance, configure it, and show you how to add coins. And you're going to be able to do this with pretty much any computer you have sitting around. In fact, this tutorial series, I'm actually running off of an older laptop I have. So it's got an older quad-core i5 in it. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I think it has around 120 gig SSD. So not, crazy intensive specs or anything, but I'm going to show you how you can set everything up. And that's kind of what this series is going to be about. The goal here is not to have you go out and buy a bunch of hardware and, have to buy servers or anything like that to run it. You really can run this on anything. Now, the Docker containers that I've built will work with any x86 or x64 platform. They will not work with ARM. I do not have them compiled for ARM. So the way things stand right now, you do need to have a computer running either Linux or this may work on Windows, but I'm going to basically be using MMPOS for this tutorial series. You could use HiveOS as well, but this isn't going to work on an Orange Pi or a Raspberry Pi, those types of devices. You can make it work. There's a lot more steps involved, but just have a baseline guidelines around this series. We're going to be concentrating on using full computers for these. And then, the goal here really is to teach you guys how to be truly self-sovereign in that you're minting your own coins without relying on any type of intermediary or central authority. I know the word central authority gets thrown out a lot, with censorship, things like that. But really, we're talking about any type of central entity that could at any time shut down and that could interrupt your mining operations. That could be something as simple as a mining pool, where if you were mining to a certain pool, they shut down, they decide, they weren't making enough from the fees, so they're going to close shop. Then you have to all of a sudden, find an alternative. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to be self-sufficient in that if we want to mine and support the networks, we want to be able to do everything on our own within our home network. And that's really the true ethos of decentralization and cryptocurrency at its core. And that's mainly what we're going to be focusing on in this series. Oh, starting off, let's talk about what your mining options are. So you're probably aware that you've got solo mining, and then you have what we call shared pool mining. On the solo mining side, there are the kind of when Bitcoin came out and the early years of some of those forks of Bitcoin, you could mine directly to your core wallet or your node using the HTTP protocol. So you could point like a CPU miner at a HTTP endpoint that was being exposed by the node, and it would periodically pull for new block heights, and then it would try to solve those blocks and submit them directly to the node. And it was a very inefficient way of doing mining, because anytime there was a new block detected, the node wasn't able to push that info down to the miner. The miner had to periodically request to see if there's a new block available. And so that in itself actually introduced latency, because you're on top of your network latency, you're also having to have a periodic ping to the node for it to basically tell you, yeah, hey, I got a new block, you need to do new work now. So there are still some miners that support that. T-Rex actually supports that, but that is not typically my recommended way of running mining. It's obviously very simple because you could just open a wallet and point your miner at it, but that's a very outdated technique, and so we don't really do that a lot. Another option is to run a Stratum Bridge. If you're familiar with Caspa mining, Stratum Bridges were super popular with Caspa and all of the K heavy hash forks. And essentially what a Stratum Bridge is it allows the miner to connect to pretty much a proxy of sorts that listens on the Stratum protocol. It then takes that and it communicates with the node. In essence, a Stratum Bridge is pretty much a mining pool software that is very lightweight and is running, and it is still trying to solve blocks, but the difference is, instead of doing it that old HTTP way, the Stratum Bridge is actually kind of running its own job manager, and it's monitoring the blockchain. It knows when there needs to be new work, and it's able to inform the miner that new work needs to be performed, and it gets rid of that big bottleneck that used to be there with the polling mechanism. Another option you have is setting up a true pool software, something like Mining Core, where it is, at its core, it has the Stratum Bridge built into it, but it has a lot of other functionality as well. You get management dashboards. You get other capabilities that, you can set payment threshold. You can set all kinds of things. And the really nice thing with running a mining pool software is that you're also going to have the ability to add new coins across varying algorithms. Where with the Stratum Bridges, they are very specific to one specific algorithm, and in many cases specific to one specific coin. And so you would end up having to spin up tons of different Stratum Bridges, different code bases, all of that, for each coin that you want to mine. With the pool software, that's kind of all built in for you. And so you can set up a pool in solo mode, which basically means whoever finds a block gets that block reward. You can also set up a pool in shared mode, which means if you have multiple people connecting to it, the rewards will be proportional to how many shares each person has submitted. So just talking about each of the types, let's start with the HTTP type. So your requirements are, you need to have mining hardware. you need to have mining software that supports HTTP, as I mentioned, like T-Rex. And you need a node that is running a wallet. This could be something like a core Qt wallet, anything like that. The miner's then going to connect to that node or core wallet and using HTTP instead of the Stratum TCP, which I also mentioned, this is the legacy way of doing things, where the miners have to periodically ping the node for new work instead of that work being pushed down to them in more of a subscriber model. Most modern mining do not support this. Like I said, T-Rex is kind of the one that stands out that does support it. Most other ones do not. They only generally support the Stratum protocol. And the other thing I didn't mention is with this, any newly minted coins hit that wallet directly that the node is running under. You don't have the ability to have it pay out to any other wallet. Moving on to the Stratum Bridge one. So Stratum Bridge is going to be very similar. Obviously, you need your mining hardware. You need software that supports the Stratum protocol. This could be Stratum plus TCP. It could also be the TLS Stratum. And then you're also going to need a node with a wallet. And you also, in addition, need the Stratum Bridge. And as I mentioned, the Stratum Bridge basically acts as that job manager, tells the miner when new work needs to be performed, and acts, it's kind of like a protocol offloading process, or proxy, if you will, where it accepts that Stratum work and sends it to the node via the HTTP RPC protocol. And then, the miners are connecting to that Stratum Bridge. That Stratum Bridge is then connecting to the node. The advantage with this, most modern miners do support this. If you are building a miner today, mining software, or just looking for any type of implementation, Stratum and Stratum 2 are pretty much the gold standards. They are what we consider industry standards for crypto mining. And once again, with this, any newly minted coins arrive in the node wallet directly. Now, there are a couple Stratum Bridges that do allow you to override that whenever you set up the Stratum Bridge, like the Caspa and the K-Heavy hash ones do. But for the most part, generally, it's whatever wallet you define in the node. And moving on to talking about setting up a solo mining pool. So the hardware requirements for this are going to be very similar. So you've got the mining hardware, software that supports Stratum TCP, a node. You need a pool wallet. This can be the same as the node, but it could be different as well. And then mining pool software. So once again, the mining pool software is going to act as the job manager. It's going to tell the miner when new work needs to be performed, and it kind of acts as that proxy or that, traffic controller where it's accepting that Stratum protocol data and sending it to the node through the RPC protocol. And the miner is going to connect to the Stratum port that the pool exposes, and then the pool is going to accept that. It's going to handle all of the share processing. It's going to validate whether that share is a block candidate or not. And if it is, then it's going to submit it to the network. And then the miner is basically going to get that reward. The difference here is that because you're running that pool software with a pool wallet, any new minted coins will hit that pool wallet first. And then once they mature and they become unlocked, then that pool wallet will pay out that block reward minus any fees to the miner address that submitted the block. And then if we talk about the shared mining pool, it's essentially the same thing, except shares are kept tracked by the pool. And then the newly minted coins, they'll hit the pool wallet. And then when the pool goes to pay out, it's going to look at those submitted shares that were tied to that block submission and pay it out proportionally regardless of whoever hit the block. And moving on, why should you run a local pool? So this is kind of some key items I wanted to touch on. So first thing is you're going to minimize latency for submitting blocks. And second is you're going to be able to easily solo mine many coins across many algorithms. So I've talked about this. Mining Core supports a crazy amount of algorithms and insane amount of coins across all of those algorithms. The latency is huge for high difficulty networks like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, because when you're submitting those blocks, you're competing with a massive user base that is trying to solve those blocks at the same time. So you want your share to get, if it is a block candidate, you want it getting submitted as quickly as possible to the network. You also get central management software and mining statistics. So if you've ever used a mining pool, you know what I'm talking about. You get the ability to see all your workers, what their effective hash rate is. You know, you're going to be able to see what the network difficulty is, what the best share submitted is, things like that. And then also, once the pool's initially set up, configuring a new coin, it actually only takes a couple minutes. Once you get a node synced, it's really a copy and paste block for the most part on the config file that you just need to tweak and set an endpoint, a username and password, a pool wallet. And honestly, anytime I'm setting up a new coin, once my node sync, it takes me, maybe 3 to 5 minutes to add a new coin to the pool. And that's where your awesome advantage is here. A couple other things, you can control the amount of payouts and frequencies that they hit your wallet. So you can let those coins accrue on your pool wallet, and you can decide what threshold you want them to actually hit your wallet. And then another advantage here is when new coins launch. So if new coins come out and you're aware of those coins and they're already on an algorithm that is supported by your mining pool software, you can easily add them and solo mine them before they're even listed on mining pool stats or they're on any other pool. So you always have that kind of that early adopter option there. When you're already running your pool, it mitigates the time to set it up, especially if a coin is created on an existing algorithm. And, the last awesome thing here is if you want to run a private pool, for your family, your closest friends, if you just want to have like a little pool that you aggregate hash rate together, this is a great way to do it. You run it at home, super easy. So now let's talk about if there's any downfalls. There actually are a few that I want to touch on. Number one is you're responsible for uptime. Typically, when you're using a hosted mining pool, they've got failover in place. They've got support personnel. They're basically in the business to make sure that their pool is up 99.999% of the time. And so that onus now falls on you if you're running your own pool. You don't want that system going down and then all of a sudden none of your miners connecting. Now, there are some risk mitigation tactics that you can take here. Some of those steps involve making sure you set up failover pools. So use your own solo pool as your primary, and then maybe have another failover pool that is one of the hosted ones, just so that you always have that backup. Running many coins can require more CPU RAM and disk storage. Now, on the disk storage side, blockchain sizes are very large. However, you have the option to enable pruning on most. When you're running a mining node, you don't need the full block history. You really only need the most recent blocks. And so for those, we can enable pruning, and that allows us to cut down the storage by a crazy amount. If you just take Bitcoin as an example, I think the blockchain size is over 1 terabyte now. But if you run it in pruning mode, it's only 41 gigabytes. So it's a substantial difference in the storage that it's going to consume. Another kind of drawback is you're responsible for keeping track and updating anytime an updated version of the node software is released from that specific blockchain. So Varus periodically does updates. If you're in their Discord, they ping everybody when a new update is out, so you know to go and update it. So you need to kind of have those alerts on to be notified, or you need to monitor projects, GitHubs, things like that, because you need to make sure that you're always updating, especially if it's a required version. If it's an optional version, maybe it's just a couple of security patches, it may not be as critical, but a lot of times there will be mandatory things that they're activating on chain that you need to make sure that you're upgrading to the latest version, or there could potentially be a fork of the chain, and that could cause all kinds of issues. And last but not least, Mining Core currently does not support OxPal, which is the merge mining protocol that Bitcoin and Litecoin both use. So the SHA-256 merge mining protocol is OxPal. It's not supported in Mining Core. Same thing with Litecoin, or on the script side. So if you wanted to mine with Mining Core and you wanted to mine Litecoin and Doge, you'd have to mine each of those individually. You wouldn't be able to merge mine them. So why did I pick Mining Core for this tutorial and really for running most of my things? First off is it's probably the most feature-rich modern software that works with current hardware. And what I mean by this is Stratum protocol has evolved a lot. Bitmain and NiceHash have kind of, come out with the advent of ASIC Boost, which has changed things a lot and has caused a lot of the older pool software not to work as well with those devices, to the tune where like bitaxes may not even work with some of those older pool software. And so Mining Core is kept up to date by a massive community. It is fully open source. There's constantly new algorithms being added to it. And it has over 80 supported algorithms. I'm not going to go through the full list, but it supports a lot. It doesn't support everything, but it does support the majority. And I have personally confirmed it to work with Bitax, NerdMiner, the Canaan Avalon Nano 3s, and tons of other low-powered hardware. I've actually been able to put just like ESP32s on it that only get like 72 kilohash a second on SHA-256 and mine Bitcoin and actually get shares with those. So you can configure it to pretty much work with any device, which is awesome. Adding additional coins is super easy. That's obviously another plus. The other plus that I like is it is cross-platform. It can run on any platform. I've Dockerized it as well, so it can be ran in Docker. And it's also built on Microsoft.NET. So if you're not aware, Microsoft.NET is a platform, basically a development platform that was created by Microsoft in the mid-90s. And they put out very frequent security patches, all of that. So at the software development, at the coding language level, Microsoft's always making sure those security patches are put out. And on top of that, any third-party packages that are referenced in the code are also frequently patched as well through Microsoft's NuGet repositories. So let's quickly cover what we're going to cover and what we're not going to cover in this series. So we're going to cover setting up the server, setting up the pool software and all of its dependencies that are needed, setting up nodes, setting up pool wallets, setting up Stratum ports, and how you can configure multiple ports for varying difficulties if you want, how to check those pool logs, and how to also check the node logs and make sure everything's working. What we're not going to cover in this series, though, we're not going to talk about port forwarding, firewall rules, network security. Those all fall on you to figure out if you want this to be accessible over the internet. Again, the purpose of this series isn't for you to spin up, a massive public pool that tons of people are connecting to. The purpose of this video or this series rather, is to get you to a position where you can create your own solo pool on your home network that you can use to solo mine to. Or, if you have a couple people that you want to pool mine. But if you do want to make that thing public facing over the internet, that will be on you to figure out how you do that. There are so many different network switches, firewalls, routers, network configurations, all across the board. We're not going to cover that. We're also not going to cover deploying this on a VPS, anything like that. The steps that I talk about are pretty much going to be identical But if you if you do want to host it on a VPS and you want to have a host name like whateverpool.com, that'll be on you to figure out how to get that set up for that. We're not going to talk about that in this series. We're also not going to talk about server security. So database security, server security, and network security are probably the biggest three things when running a pool that is accessible over the internet, because you're essentially running a a pseudo financial system that will be prone to attacks. So before running anything over the internet, you do need to understand and be aware of, the potential DDoS attacks that may accrue, or people trying to hack your node wallets, your pool wallets, to drain those funds. This is very common in running public pools. And so for this reason, I don't recommend the typical person to go and run a public pool. However, I do recommend you using the pool software to solo mine to within your home network. It's a great option. So that's it for this introduction video. In the next video, we're going to actually start setting up the system and getting all the dependencies installed.